Sin. We've got a big case here. Where have you been?
So, I got a question for you. Tell me what is wrong with this statement right here, since everybody seems to be talking about it, and at least those that cover news and are interested in journalism. Tell me what's wrong with this statement.
In an ideal world, political journalism looks like this. On either side, you've got the parties, fighting for the attention of the press. And in the middle, you've got journalists, sorting through what's important and what's just partisan bullshit. This is called gatekeeping.
What seems off to you? Well, I have a couple theories.
Listen! I have some ideas.
And I think it is a lack, or infiltration, rather, of social justice intersectional ideology into academia. They found a niche, a place where they could put people into positions of power to further their ideological agenda. This wasn't done intentionally. It's more similar to the way a cult or an ideology spreads. They seek to influence others in any way possible, so they will spread their power branch, if you will, to as many facets as they possibly can. So take a look at this.
That's very interesting.
This is the Society of Professional Journalists Code of Ethics. Members of the Society of Professional Journalists believe that public enlightenment is the forerunner of justice and the foundation of democracy. Public enlightenment is the forerunner to justice. Why did they put justice in there? Since when does journalism have anything to do with justice? Sure, there's some justice in whistleblowing, I guess you could say, bringing things to light, uncovering the truth, if you will. That's not necessarily justice. However, it is a foundation of the United States democracy in particular, and maybe some others, but not as much as American justice is concerned. And I'll get to that in a second. Ethical journalism strives to ensure the free exchange of information that is accurate, fair, and thorough. An ethical journalist acts with integrity. Now, those two things are key, and they're straight out of academia. That accurate, fair, and thorough. Ethical journalist acts with integrity. However, they basically contradict themselves in this, and it's amazing that this was updated in 2014 of all time, because I'll show you. Actually, why not? So, society declares these four principles foundation of ethical journalism and ensures the use of its practices by all people in the media. Seek the truth and report it. Good. I agree with that. Ethical journalism should be accurate and fair. Journalists should be honest and courageous in gathering, reporting, and interpreting information. Interpreting? How is that going to be accurate or fair if you interpret the information before you present said information? That is called subjective bias. I have a problem with that. What if your subjective bias differs on a subject than mine? Are you being both honest and courageous? You're being courageous, perhaps, by presenting your ideas in the forefront, but are you being honest? In all honesty, I don't believe you are. Let's continue. A journalist should, and you'll see a whole bunch of these different ones here, but there was one that I want to call out, that I want you to see, that really kind of stands out. I'm going to go through these slowly so you can take a look. I'll leave a link in the description. And I want you to get very, very interested in this particular subject. So here's two. And really catch this out. Be vigilant and courageous about holding those with power accountable. Give the voice to the voiceless. This may or may not be true, but it sounds an awful cringy, and it sounds a little bit like something else we're familiar with, doesn't it? Doesn't it? Well, support the open and civil exchange of views, even those views you find repugnant. Interesting. That's something that I think we could all agree on. But does that not contradict because those with power do also have a view, and they may find it repugnant, but are you being fair to those holding those with power accountable? Okay, so going down here, boldly tell the story of diversity and seek to magnitude human experience. Seek sources whose voices we seldom hear. What does that sound like to you?
I am dumbfounded.
So here's a section you might find very interesting at the very beginning. Recognize a special obligation to serve as watchdogs over public affairs and government. Seek to ensure that the public's business is conducted in the open and that public records are open to all. Okay, what the hell does that mean? That you are the watchdogs over public affairs and government. Watchdogs. You are to watch over people's businesses. Minding my own business is your business. And government. I can see government.
Nonsense.
How is that any of your business, what I do and do not do on the internet or otherwise? Is that ethical to spin everything that you say and label people as you so choose? Or frame it in such a way to make it sound like we're more horrible than we are? Clearly, the SPJ has some very social justice agenda-like shit all over their ethical standards. You can see how it's been spun. Notice that the words watchdog are in there. And watchdog was mentioned by our dear Vox dipshit as well. Why is that? Do you think that you're responsible for being a watchdog and making sure that we have the truth and whatnot? That it's your responsibility to let us know what we should and should not know? Surely, you can think of other ways how somebody with this type of power, somebody that has a platform that can use it and say whatever the hell they want to anybody they want at any time and just put it out there because they can, now uses and wields that power for their own personal political agenda under the guise of journalism. We've seen that plenty from the big dogs, and I have another video that's going to describe why things are changing and how it changes, and it's rather remarkable. It's right up my alley. One of these days I'll publish the article I'm writing about it, but for now let's just say that you'll see that in the next video. But let's go to the next section here. So this is the SPJ. This is the Society for Professional Journalists, right? Well, if we go to the University of Washington, this is where I found this one.
Nobody was asking you to interfere with what's going on. You've gone too far.
Journalism ethics and standards are principles of good practice. Professional journalism's associates, individual news organizations, and/or journalists themselves often have their own code of ethics. However, most share the basic principles. Truthfulness. If you aren't being truthful, you're not being a journalist. Accuracy. Covington. Who was accurate, who was not? Those that were not accurate, you're not a journalist. Objectivity. This is mostly key, and I think it is the most important thing to being both, well, not being both, but with acting with integrity. For example, these sons of bitches don't know how to act with integrity. They will spin it subjectively however they feel like it, call everybody far right, alt left, whatever, fuck you type thing that they can throw at you, smear it all over the fucking internet, get the clicks and views for money, and then take a steeping pile of shit on your name just so they can get some money out of you. All the while pretty much destroying somebody's life. That is not acting with integrity. That is acting with malicious intent and power. That's called tyranny at this point. Impartiality. If I see a spin out of somebody's mouth about something that somebody said and they twist it into a point to where it doesn't make sense, take, for example, the Mueller report. Just about anybody that cares has read it to this point. No collusion, no obstruction. Zero. Zilch.
I have to admit, it always comes to the same thing.
Fairness. 92+% negative reporting upon Trump. How is that fair? Should it not be 50-50? If you were to be fair, it would be even-handed. To impart fairness and impartiality in both, they would actually have to practice what they preach when it comes to equity, not equality, because equality is equal opportunity. Equity is equal outcomes, meaning if you wanted fairness and impartiality, you would need to strive for equal outcomes, where your reporting is even-handed. Both sides are represented evenly, impartially, and fairly, level playing field. The ideas are out there. There is no bias. There's no spin. It's objective, and you're done. That is true reporting. And public accountability. Now, they keep the public accountability in there for one reason only, and that is to say the government is accountable to the people. Period. That is the job of the press. That has been the founding of the United States, that the press is to hold the government accountable to the people. That is their job. What is not the job of journalists is to spin information, to manipulate the people into what they want to have happen, which is what we have now. They've gained so much power, and the laws, the Constitution prevents regulation of the media, that they've gained power and now they manipulate it and use it as a tyrant would to control the people how they see fit. It's amazing. And unfortunately, this is a clever trap. Unfortunately for them, in another video I explain why it's going to backfire and fail on them oh so eloquently. It's going to be great. Many journalists also abide by the principles of limitation of harm, which means they have a responsibility to not harm others while reporting the story. This is one of the major differences between professional journalists reporting for reputable news organizations opposed to fringe news sources and fake news creators. Yes, this is why The Onion, Alex Jones, all that stuff. Yeah, they're fake news. Absolutely fake news. They make shit up. That's satire. It's not necessarily good. I mean, Alex Jones has come out and apologized like 600 times for Sandy Hook, but his reporting of Sandy Hook in the first place was fake news, and it caused harm. He was also an idiot. This is like 20 years ago, I think. This is when he started doing it. Nah, it wouldn't have been that long. But needless to say, this, there is fake news people out there. There's also satire that people take as real. They're not journalists. They're pranksters. They're jokers. They're entertainers at that point. That doesn't mean that entertainers can't pose as journalists and pretend like they're journalists. Look at late night TV shows. They are hosts. They are not journalists. They try to make that as apparent as possible. Some of them pose as entertainers and pretend that they're journalists for real. Taking interviews, doing all that fun stuff, and then spinning it their own way. And then all they have to do is say, it was just a joke, bro. I was pretending to be a journalist. I'm not, we're not real news. People believe them as news. That's the problem. You present yourself in a fashion that says you're credible. You have now put yourself into a box where you must therefore necessarily be credible, or make it abundantly clear that you're in it for the lulz. And that's what you should do. If you don't, you're a shithead. Sorry, it is what it is. When evaluating a news organization, its reader's statement or code of... Wow. When evaluating a news organization, read its statement or code of ethics. What does it tell you if the organization does not publish its ethics for all to access? You simply use your favorite search engine to search the name of a news source and its ethics, and here's a few news starters, and they give a list. Here's what's fun, okay? Look at this list. LA Times, ethical guidelines. Did they follow them? No, not really. Associated Press, they used to follow them. Now they're kind of doing a biased spin. It's really annoying. They're trying to go for the clicks and views. This, I think, happens when you get too big and powerful for your own damn good. The Guardian. No, they are biased as all fuck. They are run pretty much by the British government. You cannot be trusted. BBC editorial guidelines. The BBC is a British paid for by the taxes, run by the government outlet. A ethical journalist business, if you remember at the top there, truthfulness, accuracy, objectivity, impartiality, fairness, and public accountability. What happens when the organization that delivers your news and tells you what truth it is and isn't works for the government? Are they going to be holding the government to public accountability? They are not, are they? So any news organization that is funded by or organized or operated by the government, therefore can never be trusted, because the government can tell them what they can and cannot say. Simple as that. If you try to take the BBC, for example, Sargon was shit on by the BBC over and over and over again. Why? Because they work for the government, and there's a certain lady in the government that pulled a few strings, made sure that everybody knew that he made an anti-rape joke. It's not a rape joke, it's an anti-rape joke. I wouldn't even. As tasteless as it was, it's anti-rape, technically. But made sure everybody knew it now, didn't they? And they had the most power, and everybody believes them. Why? Because they think they follow the journalism ethics and standards. They do not. They are run by the government. Be wary of any news organization that sides with or is run by any government agency. If you are beholden to the government, you will report what the government says. No more, no less.
That's right. You fools! I said so, and I'm right.
Now, in conclusion, what does this all mean? Well, I wanted to point this out for one very simple reason. We see from Vox dumbasses that they think that they are the watchdogs. As I said before, I was going to bring this right back around, and I'm going to close off with this shit. Why do they want to be the watchdogs? Because they want to be the arbiters of truth. They want to control and manipulate the narrative. So when you put yourself in the position of a watchdog, which they put in their code of ethics, they're interpreting those words of watchdog as to say that they are the ones that are responsible for the narrative and what you should think and what you should know. It's not up for you to decide what is true and what is not true. It's up for them to decide what is true and what is not true. So if somebody decides to put up anti-vaxxing information, it is their job to counter the narrative and whatnot. This may be true in that sense, because anti-vaxxing is for retards. You try to not get your kids killed by exposing them to life-threatening diseases, all the while avoiding a serum that forces the body to become immune to said life-threatening diseases. That is called stupidity. But when you try to claim, as this dumbass Vox person said, that Fox News controls the narrative and everybody's listening to Fox, everybody's listening to Fox for good reason. They try to stay impartial. They are not in certain cases, and you see a lot of that actually, but in the local news, for major cities in particular, you'll see that they are more left-leaning in a lot of the stuff that they put out there, which is absolutely amazing. But what they also do is say, this is what's being stated, these are the facts, you are the judge. Step back, that's it. Now take a look at the independent creators. Tim Pool, Phil DeFranco, Nick Monroe, and others, just like them, right? Those are the big ones that I can think of that I follow on a fairly regular basis. I would include Kyle Kalunski in there, but his shit as of late has been straight up social justice nonsense. Aside from a couple things that I've seen him go impartial on a lot of it, but he clearly throws out, he's more interested in reporting what's going on and then throwing his fucking opinion right after it. So this is what I think, and then he rallies his base and throws a bunch of emotional shit on top of it. I can understand that, but he's kind of insulting and arrogant when he does it, which is why I don't like him. But I still listen. Why? Because that's the side of the argument that I agree with maybe 70% of the time, and I don't like the way he presents it all the time, but it is what it is. When he goes over the rocker of far left crazy postmodern socialist nonsense, that's where we separate. But my point being that these people, granted they probably don't have a code of ethics listed anywhere in their shit, but they do follow it. They try to present things impartially. They tell their opinion and make it abundantly aware that this is their opinion. Unlike some news organizations that I can say. And then on top of it, they just deliver the news. Story after story after story. They take the sources, they represent their sources, they show where these sources are coming from, they let everybody know, and then they say, here's my opinion. And then right after that, you can listen or not listen. At least you know half of it. They give you some news sources, they give you some things that are going on, public interest, and whatnot. But essentially, the most important thing is they cover their bases, they cover their tracks, and they try to at least present stuff objectively first and then throw their opinion after. That's fine. What doesn't happen in the other news organizations, and the reason why I think it's most important and why you don't ever want to trust any state-run media, is objectivity cannot be handled by somebody that's owned by the government. They're vicariously impossible to be impartial. They have to be partial to the government. Why? Because they are owned and operated and ran by the government. Why would they report against their paycheck? Why? That makes no sense. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. My nose is driving me crazy because the allergies are going insane around here. And yeah, I thought it was kind of interesting. I thought I'd point out this little Vox Bitches statement and what the problem with it is. The old guard, the ones that want to control the narrative. Why? Because they want to tell you what you should think. If they can do that, then they can control the rest of it. And then anybody that speaks otherwise can be shut down or shut out. That is not the job of journalists. The journalist is objectivity, impartiality, fairness, truthfulness, and accuracy. And at the end, public accountability. And what they mean by that is the journalists are accountable to the people that they present information to. So if they get it wrong, they need to come out in public and say, hey, I got this wrong. Not this shady under stuff of putting an update without telling anyone after they lied because they didn't get it right the first time, which is also against their code of ethics, by the way. So I hope you enjoyed this. I'll have a few coming out this weekend. It's been kind of hectic at work, so I haven't done shit. I hope you enjoyed this. See you next time.
I've completed my work. Time for me to go.